Welcome to a critical discussion on one of the most volatile geopolitical flashpoints, Israel's deep-seated concern over Iran's nuclear program. For Israel, this isn't merely a strategic challenge, it's seen as nothing less than an existential threat. But what exactly does that mean? And why is Iran's nuclear ambition considered a red line? Let's delve into the complex layers of this conflict. For decades, Israel has consistently stated that it cannot tolerate a nuclear-armed Iran. This isn't just rhetoric. Israeli leaders across the political spectrum view Iran's pursuit of nuclear weapons, combined with its stated aim to destroy Israel and its extensive network of regional proxies, as a direct threat to its very existence. The recent military campaign, Operation Rising Lion, underscored this, as Israel explicitly stated the strikes were necessary to prevent Iran from building an atomic weapon. Iran's nuclear journey began modestly in the 1950s under the Shah, with assistance from the U.S. through the Atoms for Peace program. After the 1979 revolution, the program slowed, only to accelerate significantly in the 1990s and 2000s, driven in part by the Iran-Iraq War. By the early 2010s, concerns over its potential military dimension grew, leading to international sanctions. Despite claiming its program is purely for peaceful energy and medical purposes, Iran has steadily advanced its capabilities, enriching uranium to increasingly higher levels. Prior to the recent strikes in June 2025, the International Atomic Energy Agency, or IAEA, confirmed Iran had amassed an alarming 408.6 kilograms of uranium enriched up to 60%. This amount, if enriched further to 90%, is theoretically enough for 9 nuclear weapons. Iran also held significant stockpiles of uranium enriched to lower percentages, including 20% and 3 to 5%. The IAEA had also found traces of uranium enriched to 83.7% at Fordow in 2023. However, the landscape drastically shifted after Operation Rising Lion, launched on June 13, 2025, by Israel with U.S. support. These preemptive strikes extensively targeted key Iranian nuclear sites. The Natanz centrifuge cascades, particularly the above-ground pilot fuel enrichment plant, were largely destroyed, and the underground hall sustained serious damage, causing localized radioactive and chemical releases. The deeply buried Fordow facility was hit with bunker buster bombs, and the Isfahan uranium conversion facility, along with other related buildings for fuel manufacturing and uranium metal processing, was likely destroyed or severely damaged. The Arak heavy water research reactor and the Karaj workshops for centrifuge component manufacturing were also targeted and damaged. The extent of the setback is debated. While Israel claims Iran's program has been set back by years and that its enrichment program is effectively destroyed, a leaked, low-confidence U.S. intelligence assessment suggested a setback of several months. Experts note that Iran still retains the knowledge, scientists, though Israel targeted many, and potentially uninstalled centrifuge components, allowing for the possibility of reconstitution. The IAEA, after initial safety concerns during the conflict, confirmed extensive damage at the sites and some localized contamination. However, they found no off-site radiation impact. The IAEA's Director General, Rafael Grossi, has stressed the need for a resumption of safeguards verification. In a defiant move, the Iranian Guardian Council approved a bill on June 26, 2025, to suspend cooperation with the IAEA until the agency recognizes Iran's right to enrich uranium, further complicating oversight and transparency. Iran has stated that it will not halt enrichment on its soil.
Israel's red line policy became publicly prominent when Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu addressed the UN General Assembly in September 2012. He literally drew a red line on a diagram of a bomb, indicating that Iran's accumulation of enough 20% enriched uranium to make a single nuclear weapon, or proceeding to 90% enrichment, would be a critical threshold for military action. Netanyahu asserted that, faced with a clear red line, Iran will back down. While this explicit red line was at 90% enrichment, some critics, including former Israeli security officials, argued that the true red line should have been drawn at 20% enrichment, as going beyond that level strongly indicated military intentions. Over the years, Iran crossed various perceived red lines without overt Israeli military action, leading to debates about the policy's effectiveness. However, the recent Operation Rising Lion in June 2025 clearly demonstrated that Iran's closer proximity to weaponization, accumulating significant quantities of highly enriched uranium, was deemed an intolerable threat. The strategic goal of these preemptive strikes was to dismantle Iran's nuclear capabilities and ensure Iran not be allowed to weaponize its program. This action showed Israel's willingness to unilaterally use military force when it perceives its red line has been crossed. Iran's regional strategy relies heavily on its extensive network of proxy forces, often referred to as the axis of resistance. These include well-known entities such as Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, various Shiite militias in Iraq and Syria, and the Houthis in Yemen. These groups are armed, funded, and trained by Iran, allowing Tehran to exert significant influence and project power across the Middle East without direct military confrontation, effectively encircling Israel. During the recent conflict, there was a noticeable deafening silence from most of these proxies. Hezbollah and Hamas were largely unable or unwilling to provide significant coordinated support, indicating potential weakening or strategic calculations to avoid a broader conflagration. While the Houthis did launch ballistic missiles at Israel, coordinating with Tehran, these were largely intercepted. Iran also demonstrated its own ballistic missile program, launching hundreds of ballistic missiles and thousands of drones at Israel in October 2024, and in retaliation for the recent strikes. However, Israel's advanced air defense systems largely thwarted these attacks, mitigating damage. Iran's anti-Israel rhetoric remains consistent and severe, often calling for Israel's destruction.
International efforts to curb Iran's nuclear program have been fraught with challenges. The landmark Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, JCPOA, signed in 2015 between Iran and the P5+1 nations, China, France, Germany, Russia, United Kingdom, United States, aimed to prevent Iran from developing nuclear weapons. Its key terms included severe curtailment of uranium enrichment activities, capping it at 3.67% purity and limiting stockpiles, conversion of the Arak heavy water reactor to prevent plutonium production, subjecting its program to rigorous international inspections, including the additional protocol for enhanced transparency. In exchange, lifting international sanctions, allowing Iran access to frozen funds, and re-engaging with the global economy. However, the JCPOA faced strong criticism for not addressing Iran's ballistic missile program or its support for regional proxies, and for including sunset clauses that would gradually lift restrictions over time. In May 2018, the Trump administration unilaterally withdrew from the deal, implementing a maximum pressure campaign of renewed sanctions. This action prompted Iran to progressively abandon its commitments under the agreement, enriching uranium to higher levels and restricting IAEA access, leading to the deal's gradual collapse. Following the recent strikes, diplomatic efforts have become even more complicated. Some advocate for a renewed UN-mediated dialogue, offering sanctions relief in exchange for verifiable cessation of enrichment and comprehensive monitoring. Others believe any new deal will likely resemble the JCPOA, as it was the most comprehensive framework achieved thus far. However, Iran's current stance, as reiterated by its foreign minister, is a refusal to verifiably end enrichment and has even included criticism of the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty, signaling a hardening stance and making a quick diplomatic breakthrough unlikely. The debate surrounding Iran's nuclear program presents a range of complex arguments and counterarguments. On Iran's intentions, Iran maintains its nuclear program is solely for peaceful energy, medical, and research purposes. Israel and a significant portion of U.S. intelligence generally believe Iran seeks nuclear weapons capability, whether by actively pursuing a bomb or maintaining the ability to quickly break out and produce one. On the effectiveness of sanctions, the maximum pressure campaign severely damaged the Iranian economy, contributing to widespread social unrest and inflation. However, despite the economic hardship, sanctions failed to completely abandon Iran's nuclear ambitions or significantly alter its regional behavior. On military action versus diplomacy, arguments for military action, as seen in June 2025, the recent strikes have demonstrably set back Iran's program, delaying its potential acquisition of nuclear weapons. This action also signals strong resolve from Israel and the U.S. and can buy crucial time for other strategies. Arguments against military action, such actions carry a high risk of escalation into a wider regional or even global conflict, potentially drawing in major powers. Military strikes cannot eliminate Iran's nuclear knowledge or political will, meaning the program could eventually be rebuilt, possibly in more clandestine locations. Furthermore, they carry risks of unintended consequences, mission creep, and even radioactive fallout. Critics also highlight the legal and constitutional implications of preemptive strikes without broader international consensus or formal declarations of war.
Arguments for diplomacy. Many experts argue that only a comprehensive, verifiable diplomatic agreement can offer a permanent, sustainable resolution to the nuclear issue. Diplomacy avoids the inherent risks of military conflict, allows for ongoing monitoring, and can address broader security concerns. Challenges for diplomacy. Iran's increasing intransigence, its refusal to end uranium enrichment on its soil, its past non-compliance with IAEA safeguards, and deep-seated distrust on all sides pose significant obstacles to achieving a lasting diplomatic solution. Iran's recent parliamentary bill suspending IAEA cooperation is a clear hurdle. Israel's preemptive strike doctrine against perceived nuclear threats has strong historical precedents in the Middle East. Operation Opera, 1981. Israeli jets conducted a daring raid, destroying Iraq's Osirak nuclear reactor, which Israel feared Saddam Hussein would use to produce nuclear weapons. Operation Orchard, 2007. Israel similarly bombed a suspected nuclear reactor in Syria, believed to be built with North Korean assistance. These actions established a clear pattern. Israel will act unilaterally, if necessary, to prevent hostile regimes in its vicinity from acquiring nuclear weapons capabilities. Relations between Iran and Israel weren't always hostile. Before the 1979 Islamic Revolution, Iran, under the Shah, maintained cordial, though often discreet relations with Israel, driven by shared strategic interests against Arab nationalism. However, the revolution fundamentally transformed Iran into an ideological adversary, viewing Israel as a Western outpost and illegitimate entity in the Muslim world. Since the 1990s, this animosity has escalated into a full-blown proxy conflict, with Iran actively funding, training, and arming groups like Hezbollah, Hamas, and other militias to act against Israeli interests. This long-standing proxy war has been a consistent source of regional instability and direct attacks against Israel. Looking ahead, several potential future scenarios loom large, each with significant implications. Iran achieving nuclear capability. This remains Israel's worst-case scenario. If Iran were to successfully develop nuclear weapons, it would fundamentally alter the regional power balance, potentially leading to a dangerous nuclear arms race in the Middle East and vastly increasing the risk of miscalculation or conflict. Resumption of conflict. The current ceasefire announced by President Trump on June 23, 2025, is likely temporary. There's a high risk of renewed missile exchanges, retaliatory actions, or even a full-scale regional war if Iran attempts to quickly reconstitute its nuclear program or retaliates more forcefully for the recent strikes. While unlikely, the possibility of a tactical nuclear strike by a desperate Iran, though extremely low probability, remains a catastrophic risk. Renewed diplomatic agreement. This is the most favorable scenario, leading to a permanent ceasefire and a verifiable, mutually agreed-upon resolution to Iran's nuclear program. Such a deal would likely involve significant concessions from both sides, including verifiable limits on Iran's enrichment, comprehensive international inspections, and potentially sanctions relief. However, Iran's current defiant stance on enrichment and the deep-seated distrust on all sides make this path highly challenging. Continued tensions and shadow war. Even without overt warfare, the proxy war, cyber warfare, and covert operations will likely continue, keeping the region in a state of heightened tension and instability. Iran could seek to rebuild its capabilities in more clandestine ways, leading to ongoing intelligence challenges and potential for future preemptive actions. The implications of these scenarios are profound: potential regional power shifts, widespread destruction, mass displacement, and the imperative for sustained international diplomatic efforts and collective security measures to prevent further escalation. The path forward remains uncertain, fraught with danger, and will require careful navigation by all regional and international actors.